As the sun rose, busy footsteps already echoed through the halls of Mount Sinai Medical Center. Emily had arrived early, as usual. As head nurse, her long brown hair was neatly tied back, and beneath her white coat, she wore a crisp navy dress that exuded professionalism. "Good morning, Mrs. Brown," a young nurse cheerfully called out. Emily returned the greeting with a gentle smile. Her presence was vital in maintaining the ward's stable atmosphere. "How is Mr. Thompson doing?" Emily checked on patients while giving precise instructions. Her 20 years of experience and sincere personality had earned her deep trust from her patients. Taking a breather in the break room, she found a message from her husband William on her smartphone. "I'll be late tonight. Work is piling up." Emily let out a small sigh. Her husband's work as president of a real estate development company had become increasingly demanding in recent years. Still, she sent back an understanding reply. "All right. I'll leave leftovers in the fridge." Memories of their high school days suddenly flooded back. Sharing lunch together in a corner of the schoolyard. Supporting his entrepreneurial dreams while she attended nursing school. All their struggles had led to their current stable life. On holidays, they cherished time spent together with family in the Mediterranean-style mansion her parents had built. Located in the quiet residential area of Ball Harbor, the house was Emily's pride. Sundays were especially special. The whole family would attend their local church, followed by brunch at the Cheesecake Factory with her sister Olivia. Her sister, known for her flashy blonde hair and perfect makeup, worked as a receptionist at a beauty clinic. While they maintained the appearance of close sisters, Emily occasionally felt unsettled by the sharp looks Olivia would give. Still, following the family values inherited from their parents, she chose to ignore these feelings. "Mrs. Brown, the patient in room 3 is calling." A colleague's voice brought Emily back to reality. She took a deep breath and returned to her busy routine. In her white coat pocket was a precious pen given to her by her parents, a treasure received the day she became a nurse. As Miami's sunlight brightened the hospital rooms, Emily continued her rounds caring for patients. The stability built over 20 years of marriage and her fulfilling work were her proudest achievements. However, she didn't yet know that this perfect daily life was about to be severely shaken. That morning started like any other. Emily was making coffee in the kitchen, as was her habit. William, being off work, sat at the dining table reading the newspaper. Sunlight streamed in on this quiet morning. The day before, they had attended church service and enjoyed their usual family lunch at the Cheesecake Factory. Olivia had been unusually cheerful, celebrating William's business success. While Emily had felt a vague unease about her sister's strange brightness, she had been reassured by how happy their parents seemed. "Hey," William suddenly looked up from his newspaper. His expression lacked its usual kindness. "I want a divorce." His tone was as casual as if discussing the weather. Emily doubted her ears for a moment. "What?" "I'm divorcing you to marry Olivia." William smiled as he said this. Such a cruel smile from her husband of 20 years. The coffee cup slipped from Emily's hands. A brown stain spread across the white tablecloth, seeming to foretell the dark shadow that would soon spread across her life. "You are joking, right?" "This isn't a joke. I've already consulted with a lawyer. The papers are ready." William's voice was surprisingly calm. In his expensive suit, he seemed more distant than ever. In Emily's mind, the past 20 years flashed by like a swift current. The days when he supported her fresh out of nursing school. The nights they stayed up late working on business plans when William started his company. Weekend drives to the Florida Keys, sharing their dreams for the future. All of it now seemed to be crumbling before her eyes. After this sudden confession, Emily sat frozen at the table, unable to move. Outside the window, Miami's sunlight blazed brilliantly. Next door, children could be heard playing as usual. Everything was proceeding normally, yet her world alone seemed to have stopped. At that moment, Emily's phone rang. That call from the police brought even more nightmarish news. Her parents had been in an accident on the highway, returning from Key West. Their usual weekend drive had met with an irreversible end. On the drive from their Bal Harbour home to the hospital, Emily gripped the steering wheel desperately, her vision blurred with tears. She sensed the worst. And that premonition became reality. By the time she rushed to the emergency room, it was already too late. Emily collapsed in tears in the hallway. Then Olivia appeared, wearing an almost triumphant expression beneath her flashy makeup. Her perfect hairstyle and fashionable outfit seemed inappropriately glamorous for the situation. "Oh, sister, this must be so hard for you." Olivia's voice carried an unnatural brightness. William stood beside her, looking uncomfortable. Emily sensed something different about their proximity that she hadn't noticed before. The following days passed like a nightmare. Their parents' funeral was held with the entire community wrapped in grief. The church was filled with longtime acquaintances remembering the deceased. However, Olivia and William seemed somewhat distant throughout. The divorce proceedings moved forward steadily. Emily threw herself into her work at Mount Sinai Medical Center, trying to escape reality. Her patients were her only solace. Then, an elaborate wedding invitation arrived. William and Olivia's names gleamed in gold on glossy cardstock. A 300-person ceremony at the Aquilina Resort and Spa. Inside was a handwritten note from Olivia. "Please come. We want you to be the closest witness to our happy moment." Every word seemed to drip with triumph. Emily stared at the invitation for a long time. She had lost her parents, been betrayed by her husband, and wounded by her sister. Yet her eyes held a strong determination. Her parents' teaching to live righteously echoed in her heart. "I'll go," Emily whispered quietly. It was a statement of resolve for what was to come. On the wedding day, as she drove toward the Aquilina Resort and Spa, Emily took a deep breath. Miami's cityscape flowed past her window. The joy she had felt driving this same road to her own wedding venue 20 years ago now seemed like a distant memory. Arriving at the venue, it was already bustling with guests. A lavish wedding for 300 people, twice the size of Emily's wedding. Olivia, in her pure white wedding dress, was acting like a movie heroine. While church officials and community members offered their congratulations, William's expression showed signs of unease. Everything looked extravagant, everything seemed perfect. But Emily knew. Beneath this perfect stage lay a truth that no one yet knew. The pipe organ echoed solemnly through the cathedral at Aquilina Resort and Spa. Under the sparkling chandeliers, Olivia in her pure white wedding dress began walking down the aisle. She looked like a princess from a fairy tale. Emily sat quietly in the last row, watching. Around her, she could hear whispers. Poor thing, how brave of her to come. But Emily's expression was remarkably serene. 30 minutes into the ceremony, the venue doors suddenly burst open. A middle-aged man with perfect posture entered with dignified steps. "I apologize, but I must interrupt this ceremony." His voice resonated throughout the venue. "I am James Martin, the executor of the will of the late Robert and Catherine Brown." The venue fell silent. The color drained from Olivia's face. William stood frozen, visibly uncomfortable. "Your parents left a will and a letter." Attorney Martin pulled out an old-fashioned envelope. "To our beloved daughter Emily." The lawyer began reading the letter in a solemn voice. "If you're reading this letter, we are no longer in this world. But even if we can't be by your side, we can protect you until the end as your mother and father." Actually, we knew everything. Olivia and William's 20 years of betrayal. Their embezzlement of company funds. And their plot to seize our inheritance. Catherine and I gathered evidence over many years. We hired private investigators and uncovered all the truth. As the letter was read, evidence photos appeared one after another on the venue's screen. Records of secret meetings spanning 20 years. Statements from secret Caribbean accounts. Documents showing company fund misappropriation. All the truth was mercilessly revealed. This is what true happiness means, right? Olivia's words to Emily before the ceremony now hung in the air with bitter irony. Olivia's perfect makeup began to run with tears. William's face turned pale as he stumbled into a chair. Shocked and angry voices began rising from the guests. "Furthermore, your parents left detailed instructions regarding the inheritance of their estate." Attorney Martin pulled out another document. "The entire estate of approximately $5 million will be inherited by Emily. The ownership of the Bal Harbour mansion will also transfer to Emily. Olivia's inheritance rights are completely revoked due to her immoral conduct." Suddenly, commotion could be heard from the back of the venue. Local newspaper reporters were rushing in, drawn by this unexpected scandal. Camera flashes lit up the room, accompanied by the sound of shutters. "The police have also arrived." Attorney Martin's voice announced another shock. "Evidence of the company's fund misappropriation has already been submitted to the authorities." Sunlight streaming through the church's stained glass windows cast strange colors on the pure white wedding dress. It was as if 20 years of lies and deception were being exposed in an instant. Emily slowly stood up. With the strength and pride inherited from her parents, she faced forward with dignity. Her eyes no longer held sadness, but rather a clean, determined light. The venue erupted in chaos, and the ceremony was completely halted. Olivia collapsed in front of the altar, while William was taken away by police. 20 years of betrayal was coming to an end this way. A month had passed since the scandal at the wedding venue made the front page of the Miami Herald. In the Mediterranean-style mansion in the quiet residential area of Bal Harbour, Emily was sorting through her parents' belongings. Flipping through an old album, she found photos from her own wedding 20 years ago. Next to her in her pure white wedding dress, Olivia smiled as her bridesmaid. Behind that smile, the betrayal had already begun. Emily closed the album with a deep sigh. "Mrs. Brown." Attorney Martin quietly called from the entrance. He held a stack of new documents. The forced investigation of William Clark's company is complete. We've discovered more misconduct than expected. Sitting on the living room sofa, the lawyer began his detailed report. The 20-year fund misappropriation far exceeded initial estimates. Over $1 million had been hidden in Caribbean accounts. Furthermore, Olivia's involvement has become clear. Her job at the beauty clinic was apparently a front for money laundering. The company's shares had already been transferred to Emily. The new board of directors had named her as chairwoman, recognizing her integrity and management experience from the medical field. My parents really did see through everything, Emily murmured while gazing out the window. Miami's sunlight warmed the garden with its usual brightness. Daily life at Mount Sinai Medical Center was gradually returning to normal. However, the way others looked at Emily had changed slightly. The eyes of sympathy were gone, replaced by deep respect. "Mrs. Brown, you made an excellent decision." One day, a veteran doctor approached Emily. "Your strength is the pride of our medical staff." Those words touched Emily deeply. She now understood more profoundly the meaning of living righteously that her parents had taught her. On weekends, Emily visited the church. She sat in her usual seat, offering quiet prayers. The community welcomed her warmly. Though no one mentioned Olivia or William's names, everyone knew the truth. Emily, about next Sunday's charity event. An old acquaintance called out to her on the way home from church. "Would you consider being the committee chairperson?" Emily nodded with a smile. She was ready to accept new roles. William and Olivia had each taken different paths. William was indicted for company fund embezzlement, and his trial was ongoing. Olivia was under investigation as an accomplice in money laundering. Their wedding ceremony would never be completed. "Mom, Dad." Emily spoke to her parents' memorial photographs. "I'm all right. In fact, I feel like I've found my true self again." A new season's wind was beginning to blow through Miami. On Emily's desk lay plans for hospital management reform and the company's reconstruction. Her life had begun moving in unexpected directions. "Mrs. Brown, the patient in room 3 is showing stable signs." A young nurse came to report. Emily nodded with a gentle smile. In her white coat pocket was the pen given by her parents. It had become a symbol of justice and integrity. On weekends, Emily drove to the Florida Keys. It was a place of memories once visited with family. But this time, she traveled alone. Feeling the sea breeze, she was taking steps toward a new life. Watching the sunset from the hotel terrace, Emily took out her smartphone. She had received a consultation email from hospital staff about plans for a new pediatric ward. She intended to use her real estate development experience to expand medical facilities. "A new morning is beginning again," Emily whispered quietly. Her eyes held a strength and gentleness unlike ever before. It was a quiet radiance that only those who had overcome all trials could possess. During her drive back to Miami, Emily renewed her determination to carry on her parents' will and continue walking the right path. Above all, to live her life with integrity. Returning to her home in Bal Harbour, neighbors warmly waved to her. In the garden, rose buds that Emily had newly planted were about to bloom. They seemed to symbolize the beginning of her new life. Emily smiled gently as she opened the front door. This house was now filled with new hope. The strength inherited from her parents and the future she had grasped for herself were surely there. 1 year later, the new pediatric ward at Mount Sinai Medical Center gleamed in Miami's morning sun. This state-of-the-art facility was Emily's dream project, realized through her parents' inheritance and real estate development experience. "Mrs. Brown, the television crew has arrived," her secretary called out. Local media attention was focused on the pediatric ward's opening ceremony. "This ward is my way of thanking my parents," Emily answered calmly during the interview. "I want to put into practice here the meaning of living righteously that my parents taught me." In one of the ward's rooms, a young girl fighting cancer smiled by the window. It was a special room overlooking a healing garden that Emily had particularly focused on. By combining the technology from the former real estate company with medical field knowledge, they had created a truly patient-centered facility. "We're so happy to have such a wonderful facility in our town," a church acquaintance who attended the opening ceremony spoke with tears in her eyes. "Your father and mother must be so proud." True to those words, Emily's life had changed dramatically over the past year. The real estate development company had been reborn as an enterprise specializing in medical facility development, and its honest management approach had become a model for the industry. William had received a 10-year prison sentence, and Olivia had reportedly moved to the West Coast after receiving a suspended sentence. Emily didn't track their whereabouts. She had chosen to move forward, leaving the past in the past. "Mom, Dad, please watch over me." Emily spoke to her parents' memorial photographs on the morning of the opening ceremony. "The daughter you protected is now able to protect many people's lives." At the ceremony, regional medical professionals and representatives from political and business circles gathered to celebrate the birth of this groundbreaking facility. Emily's speech, which demonstrated new possibilities in medical care and real estate development, received significant attention. "This project is just the beginning," Emily declared powerfully. "We will continue doing what we can for people's health and happiness." In the garden of her Bal Harbour home, the roses she had planted a year ago were blooming beautifully. The flowers she had planted as a symbol of her new life had now become the centerpiece of the garden. On holidays, Emily actively participated in local charity activities. Her experience had become a source of hope for others facing life's difficulties. "I never imagined such wonderful changes were possible," one day, a veteran nurse reminisced. "Your experience has become a life lesson for all of us," Emily answered with a quiet smile. "Perhaps life has hidden gifts for us all." As Miami's sunset colored the ward's windows, Emily was reviewing plans for a new project. Next year, she planned to build a comprehensive care facility for the elderly. She intended to continue giving back to society using the assets and wisdom inherited from her parents. "New dreams are always right before us," Emily whispered as she gazed out the window. Her eyes held a brilliance unlike ever before. It was a special light that only those who knew true love and justice could possess.